Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Colm Moore, and in this session, my colleague Oliver Marchand and I will be giving a presentation looking at the current status of AnaCredit reporting 2 years in. To begin with, I will be providing a summary of a white paper I have co-written with my colleague Colin McGarrigle called AnaCredit Reporting, Burden or Benefit. The paper is available for download now in our virtual exhibition booth. In this presentation, I will share some of the findings from our paper. We will begin with some background on the reasoning and methodology behind the paper. We will then look at some of the differences in how AnaCredit has been implemented by national central banks in Europe. We will discuss some of the main challenges still faced by reporting agents. We will look at the impact the current pandemic has had on AnaCredit reporting. And finally, we will look forward at some potential future developments in this area. I will then hand over to Oliver, who will discuss the latest updates to the German reporting process from the Bundesbank. The 30th of September 2020 marked the 2-year anniversary of the first reporting reference date for AnaCredit submissions in Europe. This anniversary may not have been considered a high priority due to the current global situation, but it was a milestone and a chance to reflect on the progress over the last 2 years. To this end, my colleague Colin and I spoke to reporting agents, RAs, and national central banks, NCBs, throughout Europe to get their view on the journey so far. What we found is that after 2 years, while progress has been made, a number of challenges still remain. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown the value of AnaCredit reporting as an analytical tool during a global crisis. I won't go into too much detail on this slide, as I'm sure most of you are already familiar with the AnaCredit directive. But for those who aren't, I'd like to give a brief summary of the initial requirements as laid out by the European Central Bank. AnaCredit, aka Analytical Credit Datasets, involves the granular detailed reporting of a range of debt instruments that give rise to credit risk. Each instrument is reported with up to 50 different attributes on a monthly and quarterly basis. Each instrument is also linked to a number of counterparties in various roles, and these counterparties must also be reported with up to 25 different attributes depending on their role. Finally, for instruments that are secured by protection, these protection items and their relationship with the secured instruments must also be reported, with up to 12 different attributes. While the ECB provided the initial requirements for AnaCredit, the move away from template-based reporting allows NCBs a greater degree of freedom to implement these requirements and to extend them in order to include areas of national interest. This, along with a number of national discretions in reporting scope, has led to divergences in both the data and approach taken throughout Europe. We looked at the AnaCredit implementations in 5 different countries to compare and contrast their requirements. For each country, we looked at the following areas. Firstly, the technical reporting format used to submit data to the NCB. Secondly, whether the NCB applied a reporting threshold, allowing for the exclusion of counterparties whose total exposure falls below this. Thirdly, whether the NCB has implemented an automated loop to provide feedback to the RAs. Fourthly, whether a complete submission must be made each month or whether certain records are reported only on a new or changed basis. This is sometimes referred to as delta reporting. Fifthly, whether the NCBs support the deletion of inaccurate data in an automated fashion as part of their corrections process. Finally, are there any additional national specific requirements or features not covered by the above? As can be seen in the table, there are quite significant differences across these countries. The Austrian model is integrated into an existing framework of granular reporting called EUREP. This means that some requirements were already filled before AnaCredit was added. For instance, counterparty data is not collected as part of the AnaCredit dataset, as this has already been captured elsewhere in the framework. Ireland, Germany and the Netherlands all remain close to the initial requirements, although there are some variations. For example, in Ireland, additional national templates are reported by selected institutions on a quarterly basis. In the Netherlands, an updated data model is used that splits the reports into 51 separate templates, although few additional attributes have been added. Lithuania chose to combine AnaCredit and Central Credit Register reporting into a single return. This return includes data on natural persons, as well as a number of new national attributes. These differences can lead to challenges for international RAs that must submit returns in multiple countries, although several NCBs have arranged bilateral agreements with their counterparts to reduce the need for double reporting. Differences in national implementations are not the only challenges facing RAs. In our interviews, a variety of issues were flagged, but most RAs agreed that the biggest challenges related to data quality and corrections. Data quality in particular is an ongoing concern for many RAs. Even after 2 years, some still struggle with certain requirements, most commonly those related to counterparty reference data. Attributes such as number of employees, balance sheet total, and annual turnover were often brought up as difficult to source, especially for smaller counterparties. Parental structure was also a challenge for some RAs. For some older and more established institutions, this could be partly due to a reliance on legacy systems that were not initially designed to capture this level of information, and updating or replacing these systems is a costly process with little perceived benefit. As an alternative, some RAs have opted to use an external provider to plug gaps in their data. Of those who have, it was generally agreed that the quality of data received ranged from average to good, but that gaps still remained, again mainly for smaller counterparties. Some RAs also noted that securing investment to improve data quality was difficult, as AnaCredit is not considered a priority within their organisation. Instead, after the initial implementation project was complete, IT budgets were redirected away from AnaCredit and towards areas that were viewed as more valuable, such as customer journey. To change this perception, the value of the AnaCredit data itself must be highlighted. Whether it is used to support the analysis of current exposures within the organisation, or to drive customer insights and move from a more transactional relationship to a more value-added advisory role. Another area that proved challenging for many RAs is around the handling of queries and the subsequent corrections process. The standard validation rules in AnaCredit focus mainly on improving data quality and consistency. But over the last 2 years, many NCBs have begun deeper analysis of the data submitted so far and have started raising queries around this. Some countries have also begun cross-checking AnaCredit against existing national returns to look for inconsistencies. Although, if a reporting threshold is used in AnaCredit reporting, these differences need to be accounted for. Other NCBs are choosing to wait until such checks are defined at a European level before implementing them. The deeper analysis has led to requests for resubmissions of historical data as well as for ongoing monthly submissions. Several RAs pointed out that their reporting process and solutions were implemented before a clear corrections process was defined, and that now additional effort is required to meet resubmission requests. This can be further complicated by delta reporting. If individual records are not reported every month, it requires careful analysis of what data needs to be corrected and for which months before it is resubmitted. Many RAs would prefer a set time frame for historic corrections. although opinions on what constitutes a reasonable time frame varied greatly. Some would prefer a corrections process only on a go-forward basis, while others agree that historical data is important and when analysing trends, but believe it should be limited to 6 or 12 months in the past. National differences in the correction processes also have an impact. Some NCBs allow for the deletion of records or attributes to remove incorrect data, while others do not. Likewise, some NCBs allow for the resubmission of individual records or attributes, while others require a full resubmission of all records from the initial data set. Each approach has its own advantages and disadvantages, and in several countries NCBs are now working with RAs to help refine the process and simplify it going forward. Alongside the anniversary of AnaCredit reporting, 2020 also saw the rise of COVID-19, a global pandemic that has had numerous impacts, both economical and societal. Among the first of these impacts was a rapid move to a remote working model that put considerable strain on existing IT infrastructures. Thankfully, all the RAs we spoke to noted that this transition went relatively smoothly, with no major impact on their current reporting processes. In contrast, many RAs saw a noticeable difference in the data that they were reporting. The full impact of the pandemic remains to be seen, but already the effect of payment moratoriums, state aid loans, and government guarantees may require additional processes and analysis to capture and integrate this data into the reporting set at short notice. The longer the pandemic goes on, the more impact it is expected to have. For the NCBs, who played a central role in managing the crisis, the pandemic has been the first real stress test of the AnaCredit reporting data. All of the NCBs interviewed agreed that the AnaCredit data has been a valuable resource during the crisis. The AnaCredit dataset allowed NCBs to monitor market trends and to drill down on the most severely impacted sectors and individuals. This then allowed them to react quickly and make informed decisions in response. Several NCBs also noted that the availability of the AnaCredit data allowed them to reduce the need for ad hoc queries and burdensome data collection exercises on RAs during an already turbulent time. Initially, there were considerations on whether or not to extend reporting deadlines in response to the pandemic. However, it was generally agreed that the need for obtaining timely data during this period was a priority. NCBs were happy to note that the majority of RAs were able to continue to report on time and facilitate this need. So what does the future hold for AnaCredit reporting? All the participants we spoke to, both RAs and NCBs, agreed that the demand for more granular reporting is going to increase. Specifically for AnaCredit, it was suggested that there are two main ways to expand. Firstly, by increasing the breadth of the data being reported through the addition of new counterparties and instruments, such as natural persons and off-balance sheet positions respectively. Secondly, to increase the depth of the information reported by adding new attributes not considered during the original scope. While there are many possible avenues for growth here, ultimately new requirements will be based on the need for data, and those needs will evolve over time. Another possible area for expansion is the integration of AnaCredit with other existing returns. Under the CRR2, the EBA is required to carry out a feasibility study into an integrated system for collecting statistical, resolution, and prudential data. The European System of Central Banks recently published its input into this study and identifies the integration of reporting requirements from all three of these areas as the main prerequisite for reducing the reporting burden on institutions. This would require a common data model, data dictionary, and validation rule set to be created, and a granular reporting approach like AnaCredit could work as a template for future requirements. In conclusion, while a lot of progress has been made over the last 2 years of AnaCredit reporting, a number of challenges still remain for both RAs and NCBs. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown the power and value of granular data in a time of need, and helped NCBs to respond quickly and make informed decisions. One of the goals of the AnaCredit project was to help reduce the reporting burden on institutions. Progress has already been made on this in some countries, either through the decommissioning of existing reports or by reducing the number of ad hoc requests issued. But NCBs also note that further reductions will take time. On the other hand, the demand for granular data is likely to increase. RAs should take this as an opportunity to invest in their current data strategy, to focus on how their data can add value to the organization as we all journey towards a more data-driven future. Thank you very much for your time. For a more detailed analysis of these topics, please remember to download our white paper, AnaCredit Reporting, Burden or Benefit, now available in our virtual exhibition booth. I'll now hand over to my colleague Oliver, who will discuss the latest AnaCredit reporting updates from the Bundesbank.
Thank you very much, Colm. After getting a holistic view on AnaCredit on European level, we now want to take a more detailed view on how AnaCredit is getting reported to the German Bundesbank and the challenges that will result from this for you as a reporting agent and for us as software developer. So let's go into detail. Up to now, the reporting to the German Bundesbank takes place as a delta replacement with delete messages for the static datamarts and a full replacement for the dynamic datamarts. For static datamarts, historic corrections are being reported in a time series concept in which the specific records for all following reporting periods are getting invalidated, and initially reported changes have to be resubmitted again. That includes deletion messages for already reported records as well. Especially the time series concept for historic corrections, which requires resubmissions, has turned out to be a major challenge for the banks and led to a wave of validation errors caused by partly inconsistent follow-up corrections by the banks. And as a result of this, diverging data inventories between banks and Bundesbank. That was not only a German topic. Same applies, for example, to Luxembourg, which also reported with this delta and time series strategy. Luxembourg already switched the reporting strategy to full replacement in combination with point of time for corrections in the third quarter of 2019 and partially ordered a resubmission of all historic reporting dates with this new strategy. The German Bundesbank also started a sounding on the reporting strategy late in 2019 and announced a new strategy via bulletin in July 2020 and new technical standards which have to be applied for reporting date July 2021. With the new reporting strategy of the German Bundesbank, major adjustments for the reporting of the credit data marts has been announced. First, introduction of 3 new submission types in accordance with the ECB submission types: full replacement, full dynamic, and change. But keep in mind, the given reporting strategy with submission type replace will still be valid for the RIAD data mart even after July 2021. Second, the validity of historic corrections for static data marts will change from time series to point of time, which makes correction in different historic reporting periods basically independent. Besides the changed submission types, the action types replace and delete remain unchanged, even if the type delete is not applicable for full replacement submissions. Let's take a deeper look on the different submission types. The submission type can be set on reporting schema level. That means if you want to do a submission with full replacement or full dynamic for datamart 2, you have to include datamarts 3, 4 and 5 and the special entity protected datamart as well, as they are in the same reporting schema. Let's assume for the actual reporting period a subset of records for datamart 2 that are unchanged or do have the action types changed or deleted regarding the previous reporting period. All of these potentially to be reported records add up to a total of 100%. If you go for a full replacement submission, you have to submit all unchanged and changed records. You don't have to submit the deleted ones, but as you are reporting a full replacement, you implicitly report them as being deleted by not reporting them. If you go for a full dynamic submission, you have to submit all unchanged and deleted records with regard to the previous reporting period. This time, the unchanged records are being reported implicitly, as the German Bundesbank copies all records from the previous period to the actual period, which are not referenced by the changed or deleted records. For the initial reporting of the actual reporting period, full dynamic is the same as the former replace submission. But if you want to use full dynamic submission for historic corrections, the delta is not being calculated against the latest reporting for that specific reporting period, as done with replace today, but still to the previous reporting period. By the way, the delta approach with full dynamic is only valid for static credit datamarts. Dynamic datamarts are treated as full replacement even in the full dynamic submission type. Last but not least, you can choose a submission type change for historic corrections only. This submission type is equivalent to the given submission type replace and contains only the records that have been changed, with action type changed or deleted. With respect on the data volume that is getting reported, you will see a major increase with full replacement and even a major increase with full dynamic when doing historic corrections. From our perspective, a full dynamic submission of historic reporting periods doesn't bring any additional value against options full replacement or change, and is driving complexity and reported data volume on the other side. Now let's take a deeper look on the switch from time series to point of time concept for historic corrections. The easiest way to describe this switch and the consequences for correction reporting is to run through an example. Let's assume we submitted datamart 2 initially in January with action type replace. No delta in February and new submission in March due to change in attribute A. No further delta in April and a deletion message in May. Now you have to do a correction for attribute B, which is valid from January until deletion. Within the given time series approach, you have to submit a new record for January with the changed attribute B and you have to create follow-up corrections in order to resubmit the initially submitted changes and deletions. This will be a new submission for March with changed attribute A and B and the deletion message in May. The correction and the follow-up resubmissions have to be submitted to the Bundesbank in chronological order with at least 1 hour difference in submitting. With the new point of time approach, it will be slightly different. You still have to submit a new record for January with the changed attribute B, but the follow-up corrections are partially different. With the point of time approach, you have to correct every single reporting period in which the change in attribute B is valid. This means until April. You don't have to resubmit the deletion again, as an already reported deletion is still valid in May. So, what do we expect from the new reporting strategy? Due to the option of full replacement, it should reach a data convergence with the Bundesbank quite easily. Due to the switch from time series to point of time approach for corrections, you can submit each reporting period on its own without triggering cascading validations for all following reporting periods by the Bundesbank. On the other side, we expect a higher volume of records and higher runtime for SDMX reporting by using full replacement for initial reporting or correction reporting. We expect significantly higher data volume and runtime for SDMX reporting for correction processing when using full replacement or full dynamic, if being supported by the software. And we expect more historical reporting dates that have to be corrected for the same initial correction. I hope you got a brief understanding of the new SDMX reporting approach by the German Bundesbank and the implication that comes along with it. At least for us as software developer, it's a challenge as a given functionality is still needed, and the more functions that can be combined in flexible combination needs to be supported additionally. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference.